take care of you. How you doing? Thank you very much. I think we can all agree on one thing. No matter what political side you support, no one wants to see another headline about one more horrific school shooting. Today, in our new intimate setting here on stage, we're going to discuss this problem. We are not going to get into a Second Amendment debate. There are more guns in the United States than there are people. So what we need to talk about is how are we going to slow this trend down? Just this year, there have already been 27 school shootings. By the time this episode airs, there will very likely be more innocent children killed in their classroom. So how can we lessen this tendency? Prevention, not intervention. That's how. And I'm going to tell you that we know more about these shooters than we are actually using to stop these things from happening. I have some very strong ideas about how we can make our schools safer, and we're going to talk about those throughout the hour. But first, I know many parents have either gotten one of these automated calls or know someone that has from their child's school regarding a possible threat of an active shooter. Now, on May 24th, just like any other day, Anna dropped her 10-year-old daughter, Matei, off at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. But at 10 a.m., Anna got that dreaded call from the school. 12 hours later, she found out that her 10-year-old daughter was one of the 19 children shot and killed.
Gunfire erupted this afternoon.
This week's school shooting in Oxford, Michigan.
This deadly mass shooting happened at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School.
The carnage in our nation's schools has become painfully repetitive.
My daughter Layla is so terrified of the thought of having to return to school in just a few short weeks that she comes to tears.
The death toll has been rising in a shooting at an elementary school in Texas.
Body cam footage of police in Uvalde, Texas show the chaos at Robb Elementary as a gunman killed 19 children and 2 teachers on May 24th.
Dude, we gotta get in there. We gotta get in there. He just keeps shooting.
Despite the initial urgency, officers did not enter the classroom for over an hour.
Please put your gun down, sir.
A 77-page report released Sunday called the response lackadaisical and said they failed to prioritize saving innocent lives over their own safety.
Have a child on the line.
Hey, what was that?
He is in a room full of victims.
The report found the response was caused by a lack of leadership, adding that it is plausible some victims could have survived if officers acted sooner.
Since 2018, there have been 119 school shootings in the U.S. and 27 just this year. No other country in the industrialized world comes close to that number.
Well, Anna, I'm very glad to meet you, but so very sorry for the circumstances.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you as well.
And I'm so sorry for your loss. I can't even imagine.
Thank you.
One thing you won't hear me say today is I know how you feel. Because you can't know, right?
No, you can't.
Let's kind of go through this so everybody knows how that terrible day went for you. You dropped your daughter off at school, normal time, right?
Yes, around 7:15, 7:20.
7:15. She wasn't feeling great that day, right?
No, she was not.
And
No, she woke up. She had a sore knee. She fell down the day before, and her asthma had been flaring up that night. So I had asked her that morning, you know, do you want to go to school? I said, you don't really have to. You know, it's the last week of school. But she chose to go.
And how many times have you played the what if game since then?
Every day.
What if you had insisted that she stay home?
Every day.
What do you say to yourself about that?
Why didn't you push harder? Why didn't you just ask her to just tell her to stay?
And it was about 3 hours later that you got the message, right?
Yes.
And what'd you think when you got the message?
I called her dad to let him know. I was locked down at my work. They wouldn't let me out. So, I was calling everybody I knew, please go out there. And then I got a second call from the school, and she said that it was under control. Everything was under control. About 2 minutes later, there was just still chaos at the place that I worked. And I said, no, something's not right here. They let me out. They released me. They said to go to the school.
Mm-hmm. And why were you locked down?
Because there was an active shooter. My place of work is nearby.
Okay.
So that's why they...
Okay, so they were just trying to keep everybody off the
Yes.
street for that period of time. You did not find out that she was actually a victim until 10 o'clock that night? Do you know why it took so long?
I don't. I think there was just mass confusion. They didn't know how to identify the victims.
You went to the school. What time did you get there?
I got there that morning. I want to say, after the first time I got the call, I want to say about 25 minutes.
And what was going on when you got to the school?
There was children running out of windows. There was people everywhere. There was all sorts of officers, border patrol. It was just chaos. I didn't know who was going where the kids were going, where other kids were. It was just chaos.
Was anybody going in the school to stop what was going on?
From where I could see, no.
Take me through the moment when you found out that your own daughter had been shot and killed.
So I was one of the many people outside the school. And I had asked all my family, they were saying they were shipping kids off to the Civic Center, the high school auditorium. So I sent family everywhere. I said, I'm going to stay here in case she comes out. And I see kids from her class running out. They were just, some of them, just clothes full of blood. And one of the other students' mother told me, Anna, this little boy just told me that my daughter didn't make it. Well, my daughter and her daughter are in the same class. So those students were being put on a bus, and I panicked, and I just started screaming her name. I said, if you're in there, please, just let me see you. I said, if you're in there, Maite, just let me see you so I know you're in there. But I never heard anything back. That was the moment kids stopped running out of that school. She didn't run out, and I just fell to my knees. And I almost begged God to please keep her safe and bring her back. I officially found out later on that night.
But you knew then.
But I knew then.
You say that family told police officers that she was wearing her green Converse tennis shoes.
Yes, my cousin pulled out her phone and she said, if you go in there, these are her shoes. She's wearing these shoes. They're lime green shoes. If you go in there, can you tell me if she's in there? He took the phone and he went in there. And when he came out, he just said, I can't tell you anything. So that was almost a confirmation also.
It's just inconceivable. I can't even wrap my head around it. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, a famous actor was inspired by Anna's daughter. She'll tell us about that when we get back.
Nine-year-old Maite Rodriguez. wore green high-top Converse with a heart. These are the same green Converse on her feet after the shooting.
And later,
what do you say when they go back to school the next day, you know, knowing that the day before they'd spent 6 hours locked in a classroom, pushed up against the walls, not knowing what was going to happen?
what happened to Anna is a mother's worst nightmare. On May 24th, Anna lost her only daughter, 10-year-old Maite, in the horrific mass shooting in Uvalde, Texas. Actor Matthew McConaughey used those green shoes as a symbol of the tragedy at an emotional White House press conference.
9-year-old Maite Rodriguez wanted to be a marine biologist. Maite cared for the environment so strongly that when the city asked her mother if they could release some balloons into the sky, in her memory, her mom said, "Oh, no, Maite wouldn't want to litter." Maite wore green high-top Converse with a heart she had hand-drawn on the right toe because they represented her love of nature. Wore these every day. These are the same green Converse on her feet that turned out to be the only clear evidence that could identify her after the shooting. How about that?
So tell me about your necklace that you're wearing.
This is a turtle, little turtle for marine biology. She wanted to be a marine biologist. She goes everywhere with me. Her ashes are in here. A little bit of her ashes are in here. And then this is her fingerprint right here. Her birthstone is right here. And then this was a ring of hers that I carry with me.
Just helps you feel close to her.
It does. It's hard to leave home sometimes, but I have to remind myself that she still goes with me wherever I go.
A lot of time passed from when this event started and when finally this shooter was taken down. Do you think she could have been saved?
I think a lot of those students and the teachers could have been saved. My daughter as well. 77 minutes is absolutely ridiculous. Those police officers, I believe, whoever authority was there that, waited that long, they had no heart. They took an oath. They knew what they were getting into. Your job is to run into the line of fire, not away from it.
Was the school prepared for this?
They were absolutely not prepared. The outside door was open. The teacher's door was open. The door that's in between the classrooms was also open.
A lot of people have asked if this shooter had such easy access, why did the police not have easy access? I guess you've asked yourself that question many times. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you've gotten any answers that are satisfactory in any way at all?
No, there's nothing that has given me any answers.
Mm-hmm.
I do know from the time the shooter crashed and when he went into the school, he walked. He didn't run. He took his time and he walked.
What do you want to see happen as a result of this tragedy?
Accountability, justice. Yes, he was the shooter, but it is those police officers and everybody that was in there involved. It was their job to save as many people as they could, not wait 77 minutes. So I believe they need to be held accountable. Also, gun laws. Why would an 18-year-old need a weapon of war? I just cannot wrap my head around it.
Knowing Maite the way you did, what do you think was in her mind and her head when all this was happening?
Where's Mom? Who's going to help us? I wonder sometimes, what did he say to them? Was he tormenting them? Was he saying things to them? Was she thinking of me? Was she thinking, who's going to help us? Is mom going to help me? And it just eats me up inside because I was just a few steps away.
I said earlier, we know more about these school shooters than we're really fully utilizing. There are things that can be done that can impact how many of these things happen. And some of these things can be averted. A lot of them can be averted. We're going to talk about all of that after the break. You've researched these mass shooters going back over the last 50 years, correct?
Right.
And we don't have a profile, but you have identified what you guys refer to as a pathway. We're talking today about school shootings. You know, this is not a fun topic, I understand that, but it's one that needs to be talked about, and it involves you. The president of the National Association of School Resource Officers and a lieutenant for the Los Angeles School Police Department, Rudy Perez, knows what it's like to be in the trenches during an active shooting. And psychologist Dr. Jillian Peterson and sociologist Dr. James Dinsley run the nonpartisan nonprofit research center, The Violence Project, which is known for its work on mass shooting prevention. Now, they've developed the largest, most comprehensive database of mass shooters in the United States, and they wrote a very important book, The Violence Project: How to Stop a Mass Shooting Epidemic. Thank you all three for being here. Rudy, let me start with you. Resource officers at the schools do what?
Thank you, first of all, for having me on your show, and I appreciate the conversation. I think it's very important. School resource officers, that's exactly what the name is, school resource officers. The ability to have somebody properly selected, properly trained, properly equipped to address any issues on a campus. I believe in three things. We're mentors, we lead, and we protect safely through graduation. That is the heart of the SRO. And we have the ability to engage kids in a positive manner, 7 enforcement 90% of the time. And that is truly how we get ahead of some of these challenges that we are seeing.
And a couple hundred of those officers were lost in the last year or so, and they're just not there on campus anymore.
Across this country, we had the rhetoric of pulling SROs off campuses, and I think that's been one of the biggest mistakes we've seen in leadership.
What do all these school shootings have in common? Is there a common thread here that you look at?
There's not a single thing that happens, but there are some attributes, there are some red flags that are really prominent in those schools.
And you guys researched these mass shooters going back over the last 50 years, correct?
Right.
And we don't have a profile, but you have identified what you guys refer to as a pathway that you can identify that these shooters have been on to get where they are.
Yeah, the pathway that we see consistently over and over again is that these perpetrators start out in families filled with a lot of violence, experience a lot of early childhood trauma, sexual abuse, physical abuse, death of a parent. That builds over time, and the perpetrators become depressed, isolated, hopeless. Many of them are actively suicidal and attempt suicide previously. Then that self-hate kind of turns out, and it becomes less about what's wrong with me and whose fault is this and who do I blame. Mm-hmm. School shooters tend to blame their classmates and their schools.
And you say a lot of this stuff that happens early on in their lives, this reaches a crisis point later in life, right?
That's right, because it's unresolved trauma, and it bubbles back up later in life. And it reaches what we call a crisis point. And a crisis point is a noticeable change in behavior from baseline. So it's not normal behavior. If somebody's always angry, and then they come to school and they're angry, that's not a change. But if they come to school and all of a sudden things different, that's a moment where we can check in with that individual and think, okay, something else is off here, something else is going on that we need to address. So the crisis point is noticeable, and that's the most important thing because we can all pay attention to it. Because the key is, if we spot it, we can intervene early and we can prevent, hopefully, these tragedies from ever happening.
There are things that we do know about this. I've said we know more than we're actually reacting to. Like 98% of these individuals are male. 91% are current or former students at the school. 87% are in crisis prior to the shooting. 80% are suicidal prior to the shooting. And 78% of the time, they tell somebody what they're going to do and when they're going to do it.
That's right.
But nobody knows what to do with the information. And I've had police officers say, well, you can't arrest somebody for their thinking. So you got to wait until they do so. They're in a difficult situation. So we're going to talk more about this. Coming up, there's one thing to blame for these school shootings. Rudy's going to tell us what that is next.
I sit here and I hear your story and I see your daughter's face on TV and I see everything you've gone through. And I want to say I'm sorry. We failed you.
At the time of the taping of this episode, there have been 27 school shootings so far this year. That's unacceptable. That's ridiculous. Like I said, we're not going to solve this problem today. We're not going to stop this today. But there are ways that we can talk about how to slow this down. And the sad fact is there are times of the year that we're more at risk for this happening than at other times. What are they?
We see them happening most often at what we call kind of transitional periods in the year. So September, when students are going back to school, January, coming back from winter break, and then May, right as students are getting ready to leave.
There's also a contagion effect here, right? If something happens like Uvalde, then that gets lots of coverage. That's very likely to trigger another event.
And what's tricky with this is that you're trying to get to a point where we can have an open conversation, but in a way that doesn't glorify the actions of the shooters, because we know that there are shooters who are seeking notoriety, whether in life or in death, and they are inspired by the actions of other shooters that have gone before them. And in our research, we actually see that they actively are studying these other shooters. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, it's more than just a copycat effect. It's actually that they truly identify with them, and they get validation for this type of belief that the solution to the problem is to pick up a gun and perpetrate a shooting. And so that's where some of this comes from. There is this contagion aspect of both fame-seeking, but also feeling part of something bigger, because they feel like the world has ignored them, and now they're trying to get everybody to pay attention.
I think they try to find validation. You know, the statistics you pressed and showed forward, we call that a clue in police work, right? You think that we would grab the information that you have and we begin to work it in an area and a time and place, but you need your partners. You need such partnerships behind this, because one moment we say this kid needs mental health, and then the next moment that the shooting happens, he's a monster. You see my point? And it's like, where do we find the early intervention conversation?
Why do you see empathy as first and foremost as a necessary reaction to these troubled kids?
I sit here and I hear your story, and I see your daughter's face on TV, and I see everything you've gone through. And I want to say I'm sorry. We failed you. And I'm sorry that law enforcement officers did not do what they needed to do that day. And it's troubling for me, Dr. Phil, to see the video, to read the report, where you see resources there, you see training there, but you don't see leadership. And I can honestly tell you, living that moment in time and place in my life, you have to have leadership in that place. But I truly want you to know from the bottom of my heart, the police officers truly, truly care for this. There's thousands of police officers that will do the right thing. But I hope this is the moment in time and place where a lesson is learned. But I thank you for being courage and saying your story now that we may learn from this. So thank you. And I'm sorry.
Thank you.
When we come back, I want to talk about something I said earlier. I said this involves every one of you, every one of us. And I'm going to tell you exactly why, in what way, when we come back. You know, I believe there are a couple of strategies to slow these school shootings down. One of the big things that jumped out to me in your research is that they have observable departures from baseline, right? And my point about that is these people identify themselves behaviorally, psychologically. But when students see that, coaches, teachers, or whatever, they really don't have a clear path to know what to do once they observe that.
Right.
And what I want to say is that can start a process if someone knows where to go with that information. And that information can then trigger, okay, let's do a home visit. And if you go to the home and you find out, okay, mom or dad is in prison or has been, there's violence in the home, and oh, there's a shotgun leaning against the refrigerator in the kitchen, you're starting to check off some boxes here. So why don't students report that kind of thing so you can do that home study to put this person on a high-risk list because they believe telling is tattling? Mm-hmm. There's got to be a mind shift, doesn't there? It's got to be where this is a student in pain, and I want to report this to get this young man some help.
We see two things happen. One is that we imagine that the perpetrators who do this are these outside monsters who we could never know. The reality is these are kids in our schools, they're in our classrooms, they're in our counseling offices. We see them every single day. So that's the first mind shift. Somebody we know could do this. And second, it's exactly that. Students don't want to overreact. They don't want to tattle. And part of that comes down to what's the response when they do tell? Are we just expelling these kids or criminally charging them? Or are we saying, this is a kid in crisis, people are worried about you, how do we connect you with the services that you need?
Yeah, and you know, Robin and I are national spokespersons for CASA, Court of Sport and Special Advocates. And isn't it true that the number one thing for a foster child in terms of their outcome is an adult that puts their arm around their shoulder and walks them through the system in those critical years?
Yes, that's so true, because all of these children have come from dysfunctional homes, and they need one person that will check with them, talk to them every day, one person from the outside world that cares about them, that says, you can tell me anything. That's right.
I said it involved all of y'all. There are, what, 59 million students in school? That's 59 million sets of eyes looking around for this. Right. And then if the parents are educated, then just think, that's at least another 59 million sets of eyes if it's just one parent. That's right. And then if you get teachers, coaches, cafeteria workers, bus drivers, you get sensitized to this. Now you've got millions and millions of eyes looking for this, and they know where to go. That's right. They know there's a place to report it, that they know they're going to get loving attention instead of punitive intervention. Right. And then the second thing that's so important, lock up your guns. Lock up your guns. They cannot shoot you with a gun they don't have. That's right. Yes. Lock up your guns where they cannot get to them. If we had those two things going on, we could dramatically slow the roll of what's. Could we not? Am I off path here?
You're absolutely right, Dr. Feld. It is truly about having the ecosystem, like in this room, to be part of those answers.
And the biggest piece about this as well is we're not just going to do safe storage, or if you see something, say something, to stop a school shooting. But that can also prevent a suicide, an accidental shooting, a kid who's being bullied and not being paid attention to in school. So there's this broader diffusion of benefits with all of this, that you are saving lives more than just the lives that you think you're saving. That's right. And that's why it's everybody's responsibility.
Yeah, and isn't the truth that these school shootings are largely violent suicides? These kids, they don't intend to get out of there alive.
That was a real kind of aha moment for us when we realized that these perpetrators go in without a plan to get out. They want to be either killed or kill themselves or spend the rest of their lives in prison because they want to be known for this.
That's why prevention is the key. 50 to 60% of the deaths occur within 1 or 2 minutes. The chance of getting there and stopping it, even a resource officer is likely to run up on casualties unless they happen to be in the room. I mean, this is prevention, not intervention. When we come back, how should you talk to your child about a mass shooting? What do you say to your kids about going back to school? We're back and we're talking about this tragic occurrence of school shootings in the United States. And parents, they dread getting that call, getting that automated message. Marquis, you had a daughter that was in lockdown for, what, 6 hours?
They sequestered, my daughter is 13, and they sequestered her in her classroom, and they told the kids that they needed to go to the bathroom in the wastebasket, and all the parents got that automated call. And the kids were calling and texting their parents like, I love you, I'm scared, I don't know what's happening. And it turned out somebody was committing suicide outside of the school. And it was really tough to know. I mean, I think you really hit it on the head, where parents just, what do you say when they go back to school the next day? You know, knowing that the day before they'd spent 6 hours locked in a classroom, pushed up against the walls, not knowing what was going to happen. And it's just been a real struggle to figure out sort of how to assure her that it's okay and that it's safe, when in reality, it just doesn't feel that safe.
Yeah. How is she doing with going back?
The school actually did a lot of support and had counselors come in, but, you know, it's just seems like it happens so frequently, and you see it on the news over and over again. And I feel like when that happens, it just sort of reminds her that there's a very real possibility that that could happen in her school and with her friends. And, you know, I know that she struggles with that.
And how are your boys about going to school?
Well, I just bought them bulletproof backpacks about 3 days ago. They were actually happy about receiving those backpacks. They feel safer in a way. Unfortunately, I've had a different type of conversation with them going back to school than I've ever had any other years. And it's, you know, cover your most important organs. If you're far enough, run away. If you're close enough, hide. If there's other people around that have passed, cover yourself. Do what you can to survive.
To all of you parents that have kids in schools, I really hope that you will talk to the school, go to the school board meetings, go in and offer to partner with your school. You're entitled to say, what is our protocol and how can I partner to make it better? And if they don't have a good protocol, if they're not executing the protocol, then say we need to change that. Because so many of you at home have asked the hard question, what do I say to my children about going back to school? Because they're understandably afraid, given the media coverage of Uvalde and others. And I would sit down with them in a calm manner and tell them, look, I'm glad you're talking to me about this, and it's normal that you would have this on your mind. And the truth is that while a shooting at a school gets a lot of attention because it is so tragic, fair, that still, statistically, being in school is one of the safest places you could ever be.
That's right, yeah. School is a safe place to be, but you're absolutely right that this is the bigger issue, is the fear that young people have about going back to school. And I think we have to listen to our young people. That's the real key thing, to hear that they are concerned about this and they're looking for us for answers.
And if you can say to them, look, I'm talking to the school, I'm involved in helping, and you know, daughter or son, pay attention and speak to me and your teacher, principal, coach. If you do see something or even just feel uncomfortable about some boy's behavior at school, well, then the chance is even less that something will happen because you're telling a responsible adult. So feel safe, have fun, and just let me know if anything at all bothers you. And if you're fortunate enough to have a resource officer at school, by all means, talk to them. And I'm going to beat this drum on locking those guns up till it gets done. This is not about Second Amendment. There's more guns out there than there are Americans, so those are going to be around a long time. We just need to make sure they're locked up and we're paying attention to who's sitting next to us in class. I want to thank Anna. Thank you for having the courage to come here and share this. It will make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And Lieutenant Rudy Perez, thank you so much. Dr. Jillian Peterson, thank you so much. And James Dinsley, you guys are doing such important work. Again, their book is The Violence Project, How to Stop a Mass Shooting Epidemic. It is a must-have, and it is available at all bookstores and online. If you would like more information about today's episode, log on to drphil.com. Before we go, we want to express our condolences to the 21 families who tragically lost their loved ones in Uvalde. Well, obviously, our hearts and prayers go to all the families who have lost a loved one in a mass shooting. Thank you so much for being here today. So long.